father always said that no matter how far you run or for how long, you'll never escape your sins. He says once your sins manifest in the physical, it becomes a part of you like a hair follicle. A follicle that, if not cleared away, will only grow and beckon more sin. And since sin equals death, the only way to be cleansed from it is the blood that holds life. For truly the life of everything and everyone is in his blood. My sin was far heavier than the hair follicle. It had wrapped and grown into something that began to resemble me. My guilt kept me from calling out to our Savior and asking him to cleanse me with his blood. I didn't deserve his forgiveness. I didn't deserve anybody's forgiveness, not even my own. If my father was still alive, I could only imagine how disappointed he would be in me. I didn't even recognize myself anymore. I had become, over the last 10 years since the flare hit, someone whom my parents would have been ashamed to have sired. I had fallen so deep into the rabbit hole, I don't think I would ever be able to chew my way out. Speaking of chewing, "Dog, watch them teeth," I hissed back to the big white dog that was trying to chew the ropes from around my wrist. She let out a growl in her throat. "Hey, look, I don't want to hear your lip. Just get the damn ropes loose." She let out another growl. I rested my head back against the tree, trying to figure out how my escape that I had been planning ever since we had crossed over into South Carolina 3 weeks ago had gone so terribly wrong. Maybe it was because I had tried to take so many people with me, including a pregnant woman and 2 little girls. I should have just grabbed Gina and disappeared into the night. I shook my head. I didn't even know why I was lying to myself. There wasn't one person I had tried to take with me that I would have left behind. They depended on me to protect them from Cain and his army of savage beasts. And, as long as Yah gave me the strength, I was going to do that. For the life of me, I don't know how I ended up in this role, but it had fallen on my shoulders. And it was the least I could do for failing my parents and turned out to be the kind of person they had raised me not to be. I exhaled when I felt my wrist give before grabbing a fistful of dog's fluffy white fur, giving it a vigorous rub. "Good girl." Wagging her tail, she butted me with her big head, sending me sprawling back into the moist earth. "Shh," I hissed, grabbing her ears so that I could look into her eyes. "We don't have time for that. We can still pull this escape off if we leave now." She went to lick my face, but I grabbed her snout, shaking my head. "No, dog." She licked my hand instead. I tried to give her a stern look, but she looked up at me with them big innocent eyes, and I cracked, smiling at her, hugging her close. I love this dog so much, and I don't even know where she came from. She showed up to our camp the same night we crossed over into the state. Cain had taken one look at her and pulled out his gun to shoot her. And I don't know what it was about her. Maybe it was her pure white fur that reminded me of the hair of another. But I had thrown myself in front of her, refusing to let him kill her. "Move! It's a damn wolf!" he spat. "It's not a wolf," I told him, wrapping my arms around her shaking body. "Ty, it's a damn wolf! Move before it eats you!" "Damn it, Cain! If you want it dead, you're gonna have to shoot me first." Now, of course, I knew he wouldn't do it. Why would he shoot his meal ticket? Right then, something shiny coming from around her neck caught his attention. He reached past me and snatched off the collar. I hadn't even noticed she had been wearing one. "Look at this," he said, eyeing it. "This thing is real gold. And look, it got diamonds in it." "What does it say?" I asked, relieved that his greed had made him temporarily forget about killing the dog. He held it close, trying to read it. "If found, return to 2678 Main Street, Longview, South Carolina for a reward." He looked up at me. "That's up in the mountains." A crooked smile settled on his handsome brown face. "Why, I think your dog have some very wealthy owners. that would like it very much if we returned it to them. Now, if they can afford to make dog collars out of gold, can you imagine the other treasures they may have to behold? I frowned at his poor attempt at a rap, suddenly getting a bad feeling. I don't know, Cain. Don't that seem too easy to you? I mean, in this day and time, who'd waste gold for a dog collar? A person with gold to spare. Now, that's settled. We're heading towards. He held up the collar and read it again. Longview. He looked back at the big dog that had never taken its weary eyes off of him. Just make sure you keep that thing away from me. I sat there, still petting the dog, watching him walk away. My spidey senses were tingling. There was something off about this. I had been getting a strange feeling ever since we started heading east. I couldn't help but feel as if my reckoning was waiting for me east. And the dreams I've been having of late didn't help. I've been dreaming that I'm running east and I'm looking behind me, but then I crash into something hard. At first, I think it's a wall, but when I turn around to see what it is, I see it's a man, a big man. I can't see his face because he's wearing a long hooded coat and the hood is casting his face in shadow. But on his waist is a sword. Slowly he draws the sword. It's steel, flashing blue in the moonlight forest. I begin to step back because I know him. Although I can't see his face, and his body has gotten much bigger since the last time I saw it, I recognize that powerful bow-legged stance. My mind tells my body to run, but before I can, he slashes down with the sword. And it's then I see his eyes. Like the steel of the sword, they flash the purest white I have ever seen. I open my mouth to scream, but it's too late. He ruthlessly slashes down with the sword, and I come awake. Monroe. Just the thought of that name begins fresh waves of pain in my heart. Oh, Monroe. I forced myself to remember why I did what I did. I forced myself to remember that he's a liar and he wanted to play with my heart. I convinced myself that what I did was right, although I know in my heart it was wrong. So very wrong. And I know that's why I'm suffering now. And I know that just maybe it's Yah's will that I suffer still more. Now, a braver person would just face their past and accept whatever they're owed. I, however, am not all that brave. And it was then I decided it was time for me and Gina to make our escape from Cain. I don't know what awaited me in Longview, but I could not run the risk of it being even close to my dream. I would rather deal with blood fiends than face Monroe. And I know he was still alive. My very being told me so. And if he was alive, he was probably looking for me, and only Yah know what he would do if he found me. Yes, it was definitely time for us to break away. Maybe head back towards Chicago to look for our parents. Gina and I traveled involuntarily with a group of thieves. In total, we were about 60 strong and steady growing. But like us, some of the others were here against their will and had been forced to do Cain's bidding. He had heard me singing for food some years back. Before I met him, that was how Gina and I ate. He told us that he had a small band that traveled with his group, and that if I became their lead singer, we could really turn a profit. Plus, he said, it wasn't safe for two women to be traveling alone. I assured him that I could take care of Gina and I. But the truth was, I was tired. Because the blood fiends were everywhere, I rarely slept, unless we had found shelter in a secure place. But most of the times, because it was not really safe to linger in a place too long, we were always on the move, and it seemed as if my blade stayed covered with the blood of the fiends. But of late, something was happening to them. They were getting faster and stronger. Some of them no longer resembled humans. They had big open sores that covered most of their bodies, and it made them truly look like the Walking Dead. So I had agreed, thinking that, maybe it would be safer for us to travel in a group. Cain had brought us back to their camp and first introduced us to the men he called his soldiers. At the time, it had been around 20 or so. Cain said we would be safe because they were the deadliest fighters in all the land. And I remember thinking as I looked at them that we may be safe from blood fiends, but who was going to keep us safe from them? A couple of them had bad tumors on their body, and they wasn't big on personal hygiene. Yeah, they were big and tough looking, but they put me in the mind of animals. Cain, the leader of the pack, stood out because he at least looked clean and didn't reek of body odor. And at the time, I had even thought him handsome. That was before I got to know him and learned that he was the biggest animal out the crew. He introduced me to them as the newest lead singer of his band. And then he introduced me to the band. And it was that day I met the extension of myself. They say that there was no better blessing for a singer than to find the perfect band. And it was that day that I had found it. Jazz was the father of 2 beautiful little girls, and his wife Karen was pregnant with their 3rd child. He played the saxophone, and it was as if Yah had created his instrument just for my voice. Haman, like myself, was a singer, and until I had come along, he had been the lead singer. He also was very talented with wind instruments. He played the harmonica and the flute, but his baritone voice was his true gift. Together, our voices made a tune that was outer-worldly. Like Cain, Haman fancied himself in love with me. But unlike Cain, he was a gentle soul and had never tried to force himself on me. He respected the fact that I wanted to keep he and our relationship professional. Then there was Keys. Everybody called him that because he traveled with a keyboard that he souped up to do some wondrous things. Before the flare hit, Keys had been famous. He toured all over the world with Luna Katana, a singer that had been real big the year life as everybody knew it had came to an end. He said when the flare hit, they had been traveling in a plane that crashed and only he and his keyboard had survived. The famous Luna Katana had died on impact. Then there was Doughboy, who traveled with his drums that he transported in a shopping cart. According to Doughboy, he too had been famous, although nobody ever heard of the hip-hop group he claimed to have played with. And although we teased him about that, the fact is he was very talented on the drums, the best I had ever heard. And no doubt, he truly had been famous. Then there was Bass. Bass had lost his whole family to blood fiends. He had come home from scavenging for food for them to find a group of blood fiends in the act of devouring his wife and 3 children. They said as he killed the fiends, he had gone a little crazy. Cain say he found him sitting playing the guitar amongst their dead bodies, he himself covered in blood. Bass didn't talk. We didn't even know his name. Cain called him Bass because he played the bass guitar. I didn't know if, like the rest of us, Bass was here against his will. But I assumed he was because he didn't mingle with Cain and his animals. Instead, he stuck close to the rest of the band that quite naturally stayed together to watch each other's back. And finally, there was my instrument, Songbird. It was the name Monroe had given the cream acoustic guitar he has specially made for me. I never went anywhere without it. I wore it so often strapped across my back that without it I felt like I was missing a very important item of clothing, like a shirt, a pair of pants, my shoes, my guitar. Anyway, Cain says that God led him to each member in this band. He said there was a voice in his head that told him where to find each of us. He claims we were always supposed to be a band. But what I didn't know at the time he was introducing me to the crew is that they were all there against their will. I would soon find out that Cain thought God had put this band in his hand for salacious reasons. It was true. Together we made a sound not of this world. But Cain used that to his advantage to rob people. We traveled from town to town performing for people. And while we held their attention, Cain and his band of thieves robbed them. When I found out this was going on behind the scene, I tried to take Gina and leave. And that is when I was introduced to the true Cain. He informed me that I wasn't going anywhere. The first few years, he kept me damn near chained to his side when I wasn't performing. He said he could lose anybody but me. I was the goose that laid the golden egg. He said that the band would be nothing without my voice. So, when I told him I would not sing for him, he had gone into a rage and beat Gina nearly to death. I had found out he had done the same to Jazz's wife when he refused to perform while he took from people that already had very little. And he had threatened to cut Haman's tongue out so that he'll never sing again. Doughboy had seen what he had done to the others and decided not to push Cain, who was obviously evil. And Bass, well, I don't think Bass cared one way or the other. I think he needed to play because it was all he had left. Either way, Cain kept a close eye on us all, and he had instructed his band of thieves to do the same thing. And they did their job well because, like Cain, they knew and understood that without us, their job of stealing from people would be much harder. It had been tough over the years keeping Gina and I from getting raped by one of the brutes. The first year, I caught one of them trying to pull Gina into the trees. I did not hesitate to draw my blade and slit his throat. Cain had thought that was funny, and he had laughed so hard that he nearly fell into the fire. The rest of the men took me serious after that day and never tried to hurt Gina again. However, it had not been so easy for me. Cain had made it clear to all that he was interested in me and that nobody was to touch me. Many a night he had tried to force himself on me. Some of Cain's men were really good fighters, but none of them like Cain. Before the flare hit, he had been some kind of special unit soldier and had mad skills when it came down to combat. I had tried to kill him several times, but he had always defeated me, easily. It's a game to him. In the process of our fighting, he would manage to rip my clothes and grope me inappropriately. A couple of times he had even managed to get his filthy mouth on me. I felt sick unto death. And it wasn't until I screamed that if he didn't stop, I would kill myself, that he would let me go. He may be full of lust, but his greed held more weight with him. He would always go and take his lust off on one of the camp whores. There always seemed to be plenty of them. In fact, there were only 3 of us that didn't participate in their madness: Gina and I, and Karen, Jazz's wife. Thank Yah, his daughters were still very young, but wisely he kept them close by him because there really was no telling what these animals may do. I also kept Gina close by me. Sometimes she hated it, saying she was 25 and could handle herself, but she couldn't. She had turned out like our mother in the fact that she always had her hands in the soil, and had also studied up under our Doda AnatiYah, who had taught her to be a healer. Gina was a gentle soul, a fighter she was not. I, on the other hand, didn't have a problem killing. I could put a hurt on someone and not lose any sleep about it. Just the thought of hurting someone freaks Gina out. She wouldn't do it even if it would save her own life. Over the years, I have had to break many a wrist for touching her inappropriately. Since neither Daddy nor Daweed was here to keep her safe, the responsibility had fallen on my shoulders. And damn it, I was going to do my job. Dog butted my leg with his big hair, drawing my attention back to the present. Oh yeah, now I remember what I started off telling y'all. So, anyway, Somehow Cain had found out about my plans of escaping and had been ready for us when we made our move. After he caught us, he sent the others back to their tents, but he had taken my guitar and tied me to a tree away from the camp. He called it a timeout to think about my crimes. Then he put his best fighter, musclehead George, on the duty of watching me to make sure I stayed put. He said he wasn't worried about the others because together they couldn't hurt a fly. And it was true. My band members were very talented people, but none of them had combat skills. And they all depended on me to get us away from Cain. Quietly, without making a sound, Dog and I snuck up behind George, who didn't hear me coming because he was too busy taunting the two young men Cain had taken captive a few weeks ago. They had been driving a supply truck headed towards Longview when Cain and his band of thieves had overtaken it. There had been 2 more men in the back of the truck to guard the supplies, but Cain had killed them. I think one of the men who had gotten killed was very close to these young men because they haven't stopped grieving since it happened. I felt bad for them. Not only had Cain murdered their loved one, but he also planned on selling the 2 handsome youths as slaves when he finished his business in Longview. Believe it or not, the slave trade was booming. I shook my head at George's attention level as I picked up a rock, holding it as far back as I could before bringing it down hard on his head. Oh crap, I didn't think they're through all the way, was my first thought as I braced myself to catch his big body as he fell, lest he crashed to the ground and alert the whole camp. The breath slammed out of me as he and I fell to the ground. Oh, damn, that hurt like hell. Dog nudged my face with her wet snout before amazingly using her head and helping me to roll the big German man off my body. I looked at her with a painful smile. Good job, Dog, I whispered, still trying to catch my breath. Slowly, I got back to my feet. George big ass nearly killed me. I turned looking down at his body. She'll bash his ass in the head again. And that's when my eyes fell on his gun at his waist, and a smile replaced my frown. I took the Desert Eagle out of his waist and checked the clip. There were about 3 bullets in it. I squatted and patted George's smelly body down, looking for another clip. And I was a bit disappointed when I didn't find anything. Oh well, I had to make this work. 3 bullets were enough to do what I needed to do. Now, the Desert Eagle, on the other hand, is a big gun, and the kick of it is no joke. I prayed I didn't actually have to fire. Still, I could not be happier. This had changed the game tremendously. I tucked the gun in my pants and walked directly to Cain's tent. Surprisingly, none of his men stopped me. Most of them were too busy entertaining a group of local whores. And judging by the giggles I heard coming from his tent, so was Cain. Goodness, this could not have been easier. I walked in and looked down on them for a moment. They were so into what they were doing that they didn't even hear me come in. I cocked the pistol. I told Cain when he rolled off the dirty woman. She had sores on the side of her legs and arms. Ew, you nasty. She covered in sores, I told him. He chuckled, holding his hands up. What, you jealous? Just say the word and I'm all yours, baby. That made me laugh. Yeah, right, nasty man. Still pointing the gun at him, I picked up my guitar that was leaned against the tent post. That's a mighty big gun for a little girl like yourself, he said, trying to get in my head. You see, that's what Cain did. Got in people's head. He was a smooth-talking, conniving, thieving demon. I've got bad news for you, Cain. It's over. Your reign of terror, it's over. Get up, slowly. And don't try not, cause you know I will kill your ass. He stood to his feet carefully. Come on, Ty, give me the gun. He reached for it and I shot. The bullet took off the tip of his ear. Ah, son of a... I also screamed inside my head from the pain that shot through my arm from the kick of the gun. However, none of my inner agony showed on my face. Can't show Cain any weakness. Damn it, Ty, he yelled, grabbing at his ear. Blood escaped through his hands. Next time, you lose your life, and not just an ear nasty man. Now out, I yelled. The woman sat on the floor, huddled in the corner, holding the cover over her naked body. Good and angry now, Cain walked out of the tent with his hands up. He was shirtless, his pants just slightly undone. I was glad I came in before they came off, or else this moment would have been a lot more awkward than it was right now. The camp came to a standstill when they saw us. If anybody move a muscle, I will blow this snake away, I hissed through clenched teeth. Tell him, Cain, I nudged the gun in the back of his head. Damn it, Ty. Tell him, I yelled. Nobody move a inch, he spat. Good boy. I stroked his head with the pistol, none too gentle. Remember how he had hit my sister in the face with his fist over and over again. That thought made me want to pull the trigger. But if I killed Cain, there was no way we were going to get out of here alive. Get y'all stuff, I yelled to my small group of people that had come out of their tents looking at me as if I had lost my mind. Karen was the first to move. She ran back into the tent and gathered her girls and their things. The others took her example and hurried to do the same. All except my little sister, who was staring at me with her mouth open. Gina, move your butt, I yelled at her. Get my bag too. Ty, you not gonna get away with this, Cain hissed. Shut up, nasty man, I shouted at his back. Tell your men to come and take a seat in front of the fire. Hell no! He barely got out his mouth before I let out another shot, taking the tip of his other ear. He yelled out and turned around to face me, angry, holding his other ear. Don't do it, I told him. I will blow your big ass away. Now do what I said. He exhaled, looking at me as if he wanted to kill me. I smiled at him. Slowly, he turned around. Do what she said. All of his men, except George, who was still out, came and sat by the fire. Y'all too, I told the women who nasty selves laid with these animals. Tie them up, I told Haman, Jazz, and Doe, who grabbed the box of zip ties from the supply truck. Surprisingly, Base moved to help too. When they were all tied up, I kicked Cain in the back, sending him stumbling forward. On the ground, I yelled. Angrily, he sat. Tie him up. Base came forward and punched him hard. I laughed, completely shocked at his action. All this time, we thought Base was tuned out to what was going on around us. When they were all tired, I told my group to take as much as they could carry of the supplies Cain and them had taken out the supply truck they had robbed. Who knew how long it would be before we found food? Speaking of which, that reminded me of the young men they had taken captive. Untie them, I told Jazz. Once untied, the men fled into the trees. Right then, a wolf's howl pierced the night. Moments later, several more howls could be heard. They were loud and clear, meaning a wolf pack was near. And I nearly jumped out of my boots when a loud howl came from right next to me. My eyes fell to Dog. She sat on her hind legs with her big head threw back and let out another howl. I told you that was a damn wolf, Cain spat from the ground. I pointed the gun back at him. Shut up. Now, I have a few things to say before we go. First, I hope you die, I told Cain. And lastly, you fools better repent for them wolves get here. Let's go, I told my crew. We went as fast as we could through the trees. Base helped Doe with his drums. Between the two of them, they were practically carrying the basket. I hated to do this to Doe, but we needed to move faster. Doe, you gotta lead the drums, man. He shook his head. No, we can do it. We can move faster. But they couldn't. Leave them, I shouted. I felt horrible. I know telling him to leave his instruments was like telling him to leave behind a piece of his soul. With a sunken look, he let go of the basket and ran away from it, not able to look back. That's right, Doe. Just don't look back. Freedom is ahead of us, I encouraged him. With tears in his eyes, he nodded and bravely ran ahead as fast as his chubby legs would take him. When he caught up with Karen, Jazz's wife, he scooped their oldest daughter up in his arms so that we can move even faster. Jazz carried their other daughter. Poor Karen, heavy with child, was moving as fast as she could. I swear, you are getting crazier by the day, Gina panted from where she ran next to me. What are you talking about? Holding Cain at gunpoint? Are you high? I held up my hand. It worked, didn't it? We're free. A smile appeared on her beautiful face. Yeah, I guess it did. We went on and off throughout the night. They were tired, but I pushed them on. If the wolves did not eat Cain and his crew, they were probably already behind us. I had led them in circles to confuse anyone that was following us, and now we headed west. We didn't stop moving until just before dawn. I didn't want to stop, but Karen and the kids could not go any further without a rest. So against my better judgment, we made camp. But I told them under no circumstances is it okay to build a fire, not even a little one. I think we should continue to head east, Gina told me as we rolled out our bedrolls. Dog, who was really a wolf, was resting at my feet. Nah, we need to go back west and try to find Mama and Daddy. Gina shook her head. I don't know, Ty. My gut is telling me we need to head towards the ocean. Every night since we crossed over into South Carolina, I've dreamed of the ocean. And in the dream, I feel like I'm looking across it to freedom. But not just freedom for me. It felt like the freedom that was long coming, freedom out of this land of bondage. Her words caused chills to go through my body. They felt true. Everything in me said they were. But then I thought about my dreams. I've been having a recurring dream since we've been here as well, I told her as we sat on our pallets. Dog came and lay on mine, resting her big body against my side. Oh yeah? What about? In my dream, I'm running east and I run into Monroe. Her eyes brightened. Monroe? She clapped her hands together. I nod. Don't get too happy. He kills me in the dream. Her smile disappeared. She slowly shook her head. That's the adversary giving you that dream. AnatiYah to rebuke that. Monroe will never hurt you. I nodded my head, but I wasn't so sure. Gina didn't know what really happened between Monroe and me. The only people who knew what I had done is he and I. I had been too ashamed to come clean to my family and tell them that I had lied on Monroe and that he had not tried to rape me that day. Even though technically I never said he tried to rape me, in my anger I let Daweed see my torn clothes and assumed the worst. So I guess it was a lie by omission. Gina thought it was strange that Monroe would want to kill me, but I knew differently. I knew I had hurt him worse than he had ever been hurt. I had taken his fears that he only told me about, and I used them against him, and made the very thing he always feared would happen to him. A pain shot through my stomach. Guilt was eating me alive. I shook it away. We head west, I told Gina, in no mood to talk about it anymore. Get some rest. I'll take the first watch. She looked up at me, taken aback by my abrupt bow face. What's the matter, Ty? What aren't you telling me? Every time we talk about Monroe, you stiffen up. Well, then let's stop talking about him, okay? I snapped and walked off, Dog following close behind me. I walked a short distance outside of our little makeshift camp and climbed up on top of a fallen tree that would give me an unobstructed view of anyone trying to sneak up on us. Dog lay on the ground under my feet where they dangled in the air. I pulled my guitar off my back and I held it in my arms. My fingers twitched on impulse. I wanted to play a tune. I wanted to sing but couldn't run the risk of being overheard. Whenever my emotions was in turmoil like now, singing was about the only thing that could soothe them. I forced myself not to think about Monroe. Instead, I hummed a tune that I had been working on since I was a little girl. This song had become my Moby Dick. It always seems within reach. I always hum it to the last note that's clear in my mind, but then after that I'm lost. The next note seems there just under the surface of my subconscious, but anytime I try to reach it, it flees. Dog lifted her head looking towards the direction we had come from and began to growl low in her throat. I eased my guitar off my back and came to a squatted position on the tree branch, stilling my breath looking into the trees. The sun had not yet risen. It was on the horizon, but the forest was still in darkness. I saw the movement. Several men were coming towards our camp. I didn't think. I just jumped out of the tree and ran as fast as I could the other way, away from the camp, and made as much noise as I could to not appear obvious. The men took the bait and ran after me. I pumped my arms and legs, moving as fast as I could. Dog raced by my side. I looked back and I could see that it was Cain and his animals chasing me. There was a smile of anticipation on his face. I grabbed a hold of a log and leaped over it. Dog followed. I looked back again and saw they were getting closer. Damn! Move faster! I screamed to my joints. I pumped my legs harder. I turned to look back one more time and BAM! Pain shot down the front of my body. I ran into what felt like a brick wall. It was at this point that time seemed to slow down. In the next breath, I turned to see what I had hit, or what had hit me. But I was falling back. My eyes widened at the figure from my dream. I opened my mouth to scream as his arm shot out, catching me before I hit the ground. Just like in my dream, he wore a long leather coat with a big hood that cast his face in shadow. But through that shadow, I saw his eyes. They were not like I remembered, dark brown with a white speck at the bottom of his pupils. The rage-filled eyes that stared back at me were all white, making him look like an angry phantom. Monroe,